How are you guys doing tonight? I hope you can hear me. If you can hear me, please let me know, because otherwise I'm gonna pull up Facebook and make sure, right, that I can hear myself, and then we're gonna get this awkward, weird feedback. It'll be echoey, but I'm gonna do it because I do not want to record another and have no sound. It just doesn't make sense. So don't mind me while I keep my head down here and go onto Facebook and cause that disruption. I'm not sure what happened last time, if the headphone jack wasn't plugged in or what. Okay, let's see. I'm about to click on this. All chaos ensue. Ooh, I have volume. I am live. We're good to go. All right, I'm gonna stop watching myself. It's kind of a weird, a few seconds behind scenario. So, hi. I hope you guys are doing good. I had a good break. It was nice to get away and just focus on wedding stuff. And now we're mostly out of it. Still kind of some wrapping down stuff. Name change I'm going to be working on. So you'll see everything start to switch over from Fitchit to Paxton. Still me. And yeah, so we're going to talk about, fast food and the moral dilemma surrounding that. And I think it's something that if you're not vegan, you don't really consider, but if you are a vegan, you'll see that there's arguments all the time, right? Especially if you're on Twitter, you're going to see all these different sides, different viewpoints on fast food. And sometimes it can depend on the chain, it can depend on the item and what it's replicating. But I thought it would be really helpful for us to just go through and talk about some of those objections, why people have them, and where I fall on there, and how to kind of make that decision for yourself. It's saying camera quit unexpectedly. So if you can still see me, let me know. I'm going to hit reopen and see what happens here. I think I'm still live. I think the camera's still good. I don't know what it's talking about, so I'm going to keep going. If you have lost me visually or audioly, let me know. Okay, so I don't know, Facebook always has these great advertisements, right? The KFC burger just came out, and you'll see this advertisement, and sometimes it's fun to check the comments. I mean, I guess that depends on your definition of fun, but I like to kind of see what people are saying. And if you look, there'll be all these people really pissed off about it. Some are excited, and there's a lot that are like, I would never eat there. This isn't healthy. This is terrible, and what garbage, and there's all that stuff. So if you're a new vegan and you're kind of figuring out your place, it's hard to really waft through it all because there's all these conflicting opinions and beliefs. So I figured we'll go through kind of each one by one and cover it. Can't see, but can hear. Let's see if, playing with it. See, I can still see myself. Oh, you can see me again. All I did was scroll. So apparently that was the secret. If you lose me, again, visually, audio, whatever it is, again, let me know, because I don't want to, waste your time or my time, right? Okay. So I think one of the common arguments that you'll hear from people is, that there's a lot of them. There's a lot of common arguments. So I'm just going to go through them. So one of them is that people don't think you should support businesses that aren't vegan. And I think it's really great to support vegan-owned businesses first when you can, but that's not really practical for everybody, and there's some different reasons why that might not be practical, right? Maybe you're in an area that doesn't have that, but you do have a KFC, and you do have a Burger King, or whatever that is. You have that, and that's local, and you need something and you're on the go, then yeah, go for it. If you know that option is going to be vegan friendly, or you know how to alter that option, go for it. There's no reason that you shouldn't, in my view. And we're going to go through this, right? Like I said, we're going to go through them all, and then you can kind of make your own decision at the end, because what's right for me isn't always right for you, and everyone has their different kind of moral compass. But in terms of like that supporting vegan first, it's a great idea, but it's not always practical. And for a lot of people, specialty vegan restaurants are really expensive. And, you know, as much as maybe I would love to go to my local vegan restaurant and, you know, with my family of 4 and just each spend $20 on a burger combo meal, that's not practical for us to go and spend $80. Where if we were on the go and there was a KFC nearby, well, we can get combos for $40 for all of us. So there's like a financial implications to consider there when it comes to like that vegan first argument. There's no right answer, right? If you are really against like that, those big companies and what they represent, and we'll get into that more as we go, then you can make that choice and try and go with what makes sense for you. So I think one of the biggest ones that I always see, like I was mentioning before in that comment section, is health and food. And there's a lot of people that are like, I wouldn't go to a Burger King. I don't care. It's not healthy. It's a bunch of garbage. It's processed. And sure, depending on the burger, some are going to be more processed than others. They're not a health food. But I don't know anybody that goes out for a fast food meal and is thinking like, this is health. That's not what the purpose is, right? It's meant to be convenient. It's meant to be quick. It's meant to give you a break, right? Everybody in every different type of diet and lifestyle, there's times where you don't want to cook a meal and you need to grab something quick, or you didn't plan as well as you could have. And, you know, maybe you opt for that less than healthy option, and that's okay. And like, that's valid. And that's vegan as long as the food is vegan, right? So I think the other thing to keep in mind too is like, you don't have to be this pure being of like kale and green smoothies and like only whole foods. You know, that's a good like 90-95% of the time vibe if that's what you're focused on. If you're really focused on like getting your health in order, then that's the way to do it. But it doesn't have to be perfect. And everybody comes to veganism for different reasons. And it's important to kind of just do what's practical, because if it gets to a point where you're overwhelmed and you're like, you know what, screw this, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to be able to go grab a burger after work, and I need to be able to do this and that and that. And it becomes like an overwhelm point, then that's not healthy to begin with, right? So you got to balance that like health mentality that a lot of people come in when they're focusing on more like the plant-based eating. So, and I think another thing that's really important to note is that a lot of these comparisons, when I don't know how many of you have seen like the Beyond Meat comparisons. They take like the Beyond Meat burger and they put it right beside like lean 100% ground beef. And I don't know if you've ever picked up a pack of meat burgers. If you look at the ingredients, it's not just lean ground beef. And if you're comparing a fast food burger to a fast food burger, they're not like lean meat isn't in there, right? Like that's not what they're made out of. So they're unfair representations in a lot of those comparisons. So sure, maybe like Beyond Meat is similar in fat to like a normal burger and sodium and all those things, but the way that they presented some of those was very skewed. And the other thing to keep in mind is like, you don't have to have a Beyond Meat burger, right? Like, because that's meant to replicate meat as much as possible. And some people really like that and some don't. And there's different levels of burgers and fast foods, and you kind of got to look and compare and decide how important that is to you. But realistically, if you're going out a couple times a month, it's not a big impact on your health, right? To do that small occasional treat that's not healthy. And regardless of the breakdown, comparison of different types of meat and plant-based options, there's always going to be no cholesterol in a plant-based burger. And in terms of the life lost and the cruelty aspect isn't present. So there's definitely some wins, even if the burgers are on par or worse because they're more processed, right? It depends on where you're looking, who you're talking to, what you're comparing, because you can't just compare a plant-based burger, like the most like processed in a sense. Not processed isn't the right word, but it's the highest in fat, highest in sodium burger to lean ground beef. That's just not the same thing. They're not comparable. But, you know, compare a similar size premium beef product with seasonings and all this stuff, and you're going to probably find very similar numbers. So go for the option without cholesterol, obviously. Okay, so that was the health food rant. As we go, like I've said before, feel free to ask questions, or if I've said something in a way that doesn't make it clear, let me know, because I'm happy to revisit it and give you like more tailored stuff, right? Because I'm speaking very generally. So if you have a very specific question about a specific thing, just tell me. So another thing that comes up often in those comment sections is that you're buying from a corporation that sells meat. And there's a lot of different ways to look at that in terms of that argument. And the way that I look at it, and there's a divide, right? There's a divide in the vegan community, and I wouldn't say that one is wrong and one is right. There's different ways to look at it. But the way that I look at it, when you're buying an option from that meat-based corporation, you're supporting the plant-based option. And you're showing that there's a demand, and you're making it more visible, more accessible. So for someone who would never go into that vegan-only, family-owned restaurant, well, they see a plant-based burger and maybe they're interested in veganism. Well, they have that option and they can choose it. And it's normalized. It's less weird because it's on the menu at Burger King, or it's on the menu at KFC. They didn't have to go to some like weird health food store and like search it out and it kind of smell funky and weird, right? Like it's normalized. So there's different ways that having those options can help. And something that I also mentioned earlier is the convenience factor. And if you're on the go with your family, that's great. You can grab that. And that's something that, in Canada, there was a point where Tim Hortons had the Beyond Meat sausage breakfast sandwich. It was terrible. But it was nice to know that if you were traveling around Ontario, for me at least, if I was going up north, if I was visiting family a couple hours away, that I knew there was an option, right? Like if I need to take a pee break and I get a snack, I could go to a Tim Hortons and get that burger and a juice or something, right? Like I would know that it was there and it was an option that I could have. And there's something to be said about knowing that and making it more accessible and making it more visible and convenient for people. And if we don't support those options in fast food restaurants, they won't sell them. They'll go, there's no demand, people don't want it. And so, there's some pros to that. There was a study done, I don't know, in the last couple of years. And it was saying that, I think it was specifically for Burger King, but it was saying that Burger King didn't see customers shift to the plant-based option. They instead saw new customers come in. So it was new revenue and creating up a new section in their revenue, right? They're expanding their business. And so some have argued that it allows them to harm more animals and expand their factory farming. And it was something that doesn't make sense to me. Personally, if you think about how money and the economy and everything works, where the demand is where the money goes. If people are buying the plant-based option, they're not going to funnel all this money into the meat option that people aren't, they're going to put the money where the demand is and keep expanding those plant-based options. I'm going to see what you guys are saying here. So Sage is saying millions of people eat fast food, so when there's a successful vegan item, it draws attention, and I believe that's a win for us and the animals. Yeah, I 100% do too. It's showing that this is normalized, right? Like this is not something that like the weirdos are doing. KFC has a chicken burger now that's vegan, right? Like you can eat the mayo on that. It's vegan. Like how crazy is that, right? They sell chicken and they have realistically probably what they do to the chickens in their factory farming is horrible because that's how those corporations run. They need uniform pieces of meat. And for them to say, oh, there's money, there's something here in this plant-based option, that's really big. And that's really cool to have that visible option for people to try and be curious about and have it there. Okay, so Julie was saying she'd rather see vegan options available at most to all fast food places and have those options. It shows that there's demand. Yeah, 100%. So there's like I said, there's this divide within the community, and I'm not going to tell you that one's wrong or one's right. Like there's what I believe and what someone else believes in their experiences. are all going to kind of determine that, and you got to kind of decide where you fall. But, there's this belief that it's terrible and you shouldn't be supporting it because of what these companies do. And there's no perfect way to consume, right? There's always going to be problems. There's never going to be 100% cruelty free. There's never going to be perfect. And so it's just, you got to do the best that you can. And I think that buying these options, even though there's cons, is doing more to shift towards good and the perception and the convenience. And the more that you do to shift that perception and create those convenience, just the further that veganism is going to go. And, it has the possibility to start to kind of sway the balance, right? If we get to a place where veganism is so convenient, and that's not an excuse or a reason for people to not be able to make that switch. If we get to that place, then you're going to see more people becoming vegan, and you're going to see more options and more demands, and then you're going to see more than a garden salad or fries, and then the extreme, which is a burger, right? You're going to start to see variety of options at places that aren't, filled with cheese and things. So I personally see it as a positive thing, but I'm going to keep going through. There's some other things that people bring up, and one thing we've kind of touched on is like voting with your dollar. And this is something that it doesn't have to be fast food. Like, this can be with anything, is that when you're making a purchase, that's what you're doing. You're supporting that company, that business, that product, whatever that is. And you have an opportunity to vote for what you want. And you make that choice every time, you go to the grocery store, and that's something that I struggle with, right? You're trying to keep your budget good. You're trying to make healthy choices, and you're like, look at all these great plant-based options, and I really like them. And I know that if I buy them, that's supporting that company and showing that there's demand, but it's not always practical to include those things all the time. So, I think it's okay once in a while, throw them a little bit of money, give yourself a break, make it convenient, and show that there is that demand. And there will still be people that regularly eat fast food every day, and there are those types of vegans, which is fine, right? And that can be their choice and their journey, but there's people that are there to support it. And I think it's one thing to decide that you don't want to eat somewhere or you won't support that company, and that's very personal choice. But I think it's another to tell somebody else they shouldn't, or they can't, or they're not vegan enough if they do that. So I think that's where I have trouble with that mindset, is when you're trying to put others down for doing that. I think another thing that comes up a lot, sorry, I don't have my glasses on, guys, but I have a couple headlines. I want to make sure that I get all the points for you. So one thing that I think is something, a great way to also put it into perspective, is that we don't shop in vegan grocery stores. At least most of us, right? There's a few vegan grocery stores in the world. So if you look at it in terms of what you're supporting and where your money's going, and these corporations, it's kind of similar, right? If you look at the fast food, and they offer all these meat options, and they offer some plant-based or vegan options. Well, you're showing them what they want and what you want them to carry, and you do the same in the grocery store. So when you're buying that plant-based cheese, or the canned beans and lentils and those specialty products over their others, they're going, there's demand. And I know, at least for my little store, I'm kind of outside of a big city, a small town, and I've watched them go from a little section to an entire aisle of health food. And most of that aisle is vegan. And there's plant-based cheeses and yogurts and tofus and burgers, right? There's multiple sections, a whole health food aisle, and multiple sections of vegan options. And that wasn't there when I first moved here a few years ago, and it is now, because there's demand and things are shifting. They're refrigerated, you see those big door refrigerators, they're ceiling to floor. There's 4 or 5 of those of just plant milk in my small town grocery store, right? We got soy milk, unsweetened soy milk, flavored soy milk, and then all the, nut milks, everything. And if people weren't buying it, they wouldn't be doing it. So the concept's the same, and we don't live in that, perfect world, where maybe in a perfect world, if there was the all vegan grocery store and the not right beside each other, I would choose the vegan one. But we don't really have that as an option. And who knows, maybe 20 years from now, the world will be like that, and you can kind of be more pure or more strict with how you're spending and what you're supporting, but I think anything that pushes the shift and pushes the demand is a positive thing to do. So another thing that comes up is cross-contamination, and this is something that causes a lot of confusion for new vegans. So cross-contamination and may contain are two things that kind of get swirled into one and confused. So it's my belief that cross-contamination is not a vegan issue, it's an allergen issue. And while it might be gross, and that's okay to make a decision and say that's gross, I don't want to eat something that's been prepared on the same surface as a meat burger, I think that's valid, that's a personal choice. But when others start policing someone else's eating habits, saying that's not vegan because they have a shared surface, that's not true. You're not contributing to more destruction. You're not contributing to an animal's, life. And you're not adding that food to you and your body, right? It's cross-contamination. And at least they're honest about it. Because if you go into a small restaurant, you don't know what's happening in the back of their kitchen. They've not guaranteed to you that they've not what they've wiped their knives and their countertops and everything when they give you your garden salad, and maybe they were, you don't know. So cross-contamination, while kind of gross, for me, it's inconvenient. I rather it didn't happen, but it's not a reason to completely avoid it. And when I say cross-contamination, I don't mean when a place is we deep fry everything in oil and it's the same oil. To me, that's questionable, because you got animal parts all kind of in this oil, and that's, it's a little bit gross. So I think that's something that you got to decide for yourself, and what level of cross-contamination is acceptable, if any. But to know that cross-contamination doesn't make what you're eating not vegan. And same with may contains, and that's something that you'll see on packages, is that's an allergen warning. And if you pick up an item that says it may contain eggs, it doesn't have eggs in it. It's just processed in a facility that has eggs. They clean the equipment, but they can't promise you that there's no egg in there. So if it's an allergy, 100% watch out. But if not, then that's vegan and that's okay. So the concept is very similar, and it's not something that I think you need to worry about. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, that's okay. That's valid, and that's a valid choice, right? Choose not to, but don't discourage others. If they're really happy and excited, I think it's okay to point out, hey, it is on a shared surface, but if you're good with that, go ahead. Just to give people a heads up, but not to say you can't eat that, that's not vegan, or how could you eat that? And that's kind of some of the stuff that we see in that divide in the vegan community sometimes. Those people that are very focused on being pure and perfect, and that's not really how the world works, right? It can't be perfect all the time, and you're not contributing to more suffering or more consumption of those products by, the cross-contamination. Okay, I think we're wrapping up here, but another big one I figured I would touch on, it's not really relevant to us in Canada, at least at this point, and that's the Impossible Burger. So that's the one that Burger King has in the US, and I don't know if that will come to Canada. As far as I know, it hasn't yet, but it's kind of like Beyond Meat's kind of par for par competitor. And so the controversy with Impossible Burger is that, from my understanding, they chose to do one round of animal testing on the new type of heme iron that they had. And so that upset, understandably, a lot of people, that they opted to do animal testing to prove that their new product was, fit for consumption. And, well, sure, I would prefer they rather did it, rather they didn't do that. It doesn't make the product itself not vegan. And really, I would also take a look at and consider everything, right? Everything, all our cosmetics that are now cruelty free, our products that we buy, they're not free from that animal testing and all of those things that occurred at one point to make them safe, and they're no longer necessary, and there's alternatives and there's better options. But I think if we look at, historically, there's a lot of companies that did test on animals and they stopped, and now we applaud them and they've done a good job. And so they opted to do it one time. Again, not a great option. They could have, not. But the item's still vegan, and I think that's up to you to decide that, I'm going to grab an Impossible Burger or I'm not, right? I don't think a company using animal testing one time makes it kind of off your place. And, is that really worse than, for example, Hellmann's vegan mayo is what we use at home, but all their other mayo isn't vegan, right? Like, so they're, using animals for their products and to create those items. Is that really any worse or better than a company that did animal testing at one point and no longer does? So again, that comes down to like your moral compass, and there's no right answer, but I think it's really important to decide for you what's right for you. And then, if people ask your opinion or people want to have a discussion, it's good to discuss it. It's good to, kind of get other perspectives and double check that that's really what you believe and really how you feel, and question things. But I don't think it's okay to kind of attack others or tell other people that they're wrong or their viewpoint is wrong because it's right for them. It's just maybe not right for you. So I would say, like, as a roundup of how I look at it, support vegan options regardless of where they come from, because you're showing that there's demand. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, always choose the healthy option. It's okay to indulge and get junk food and get the quick option. And, in a best case scenario, we would have different options and we could be more picky and selective with things. But I don't think we're there yet. And that's okay. But if we keep pushing, these companies and going, I'm not eating there, that's gross, I would never, they're going to stop introducing them, right? We need to show them, yes, we want this, but we'd really love it if you could maybe have a separate section of your grill for the burgers, right? And I think that's a great way. If there's something that's not perfect, write to them and be like, hey, I love this option. What would make it even better? If you made sure there was no cross-contamination, if you offered a default vegan topping, because so many of these places have the plant-based burgers and they throw cheese and mayo with egg in it on top, and you got to kind of like deconstruct the burger, right? But you got to kind of communicate with them and say, I love this is great, but let's make it better, because nobody's really going to respond to that like negative of like, this isn't good enough, I would never buy from you anyways, and that type of stuff that you'll see in those Facebook comments. So next time you see one of those, just take a look and enjoy that chaos, that divide of people that are just really angry at a company for offering the plant-based option because it's not good enough for them. And then we have like the meat eaters who are upset that they would even bother to offer a plant-based option. So it makes it really hard for companies to like come out and do that, because it's like they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. And it's really important to show the support and kind of be like, yeah, like, good job, keep going, let's improve it, let's do better. So I hope this was helpful. If there's anything that you feel like I missed or anything that you want me to get into more, feel free to leave it in the comments and I will, let you know some answers, or like send you somewhere where you can kind of dive in deeper and get more detail and stuff. And if there's topics that we haven't covered in our lives, or you want to recover even, let me know, and I'm happy to do that and answer questions as we go. So thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys next week. We'll return to our weekly lives. Okay, so have a good night. Bye.